It's a celebration here in the studio because the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast is a winner. Thanks to the Cybersecurity Excellence Awards for awarding us a Best Cybersecurity Podcast gold medal in our category. Yeah. We're celebrating, but we're giving all of you the gift. We're once again giving away a free month of our Infosec Skills platform, which features targeted learning modules, cloud-hosted cyber ranges, hands-on projects, certification practice exams, and skills assessments. To take advantage of this special offer for Cyberwork listeners, head over to infosecinstitute.com/skills or click the link in the description below. Sign up for an individual subscription as you normally would. Then, in the coupon box, type the word Cyberwork, CYBERWORK, no spaces, no capital letters, and just like magic, you can claim your free month. Thank you once again for listening to and watching our podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you coming back each week. So enough of that, let's begin the episode. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week, I sit down with a different industry thought leader, and we discuss the latest cybersecurity trends, how those trends are affecting the work of Infosec professionals, while offering tips for those trying to break in or move up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. A few weeks back, we were quite glad to talk to Daniel Young, the managing partner and co-founder of QuoLab Technologies, who told us not only about his current activities, but his time as a digital forensics expert organizing large-scale cross-platform cyber operations in the Middle East and elsewhere. During our debrief of the episode, Dan suggested that an equally interesting episode could be made with his QuoLab co-founder, Fabien Dombard. Fabien started in small shop pen testing positions in France, Switzerland, and Germany before becoming the head of Malware Incident Response Team for Deutsche Bank, one of the largest financial institutions in the world. We're going to talk today about the skills, disposition, and training needed in both defensive and offensive pen testing and cybersecurity roles, as well as the career opportunities to be currently found in both. With over a decade of experience working in several diverse positions, as well as experiencing firsthand the evolution of security practices and technology found around the world today, Fabien Dombard has been an integral part in building his new company, QuoLab Technologies, a developer of collaborative and threat-driven security operations platform. Prior to QuoLab, Fabien began working in small shop penetration testing roles in several European nations, and his renowned expertise and work ethic eventually led to him heading the Malware Incident Response Team for Deutsche Bank, one of the largest financial institutions in the world. He then founded QuoScient, located in Frankfurt, Germany, with the aim to reconcile humans and machines in the context of security operations, incident response, and threat intelligence, and it is actually where QuoLab spun out from. Fabien is committed to in his professional endeavors to reconcile human creativity and intuition with the complexity of information technology in the context of security operations. It was precisely this passion that drew him to conceptualize QuoLab and is what brings focus to him and his team moving forward. Fabien, thank you so much for joining us here today from Germany.
Thank you, Chris.
So I like to start each show by asking our guests about their tech and security development, their security journey, if you will. So you strike me as someone who's probably always been interested in computers and tech to some degree. Is that the case, or did you come to it later in life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that has always been like my thing. And I think I'm very fortunate that it all kind of worked for me along with it. Could be something else, like which would not have worked at all.
Right.
But tech and, electronics, IT and stuff have always been like very much my topic, yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, let's talk about your early years. You said you started as a pen tester. Did you do other tech-related activities before that? Were you, like running the help desk in college and things like that, or, doing things as a kid or in your teens?
Sure. So rolling it back a bit before, work times, I think it always starts with a dad, right? I mean, you always have a figure like that is kind of, pushing you for, looking into these things. Like as a kid, you're like, just looking at gaming and doing this kind of stuff. Yeah. And very quickly just being putting a couple of breadcrumbs of interesting things to look at if I ever find the time between all of those gaming sessions. And because we had a computer, I mean that was some time ago, with like pre-internet sort of thing, and he was like smuggling games to myself and my brother, and at some point he did the same with a soldering iron, and that kind of piqued my curiosity and started a lot of quite of a cascade of events, and along with it at some point I I ended up with doing something different than just game with computer, because basically electronics was expensive. And in this time, I mean, nowadays we say like, hardware is a new software, because there's a lot of interesting development around how easy the hardware is and how accessible it is nowadays. But back in those times, that was very much like the software is a new hardware, right? Because the hardware is way too expensive to actually do anything with that.
Right.
So that's how it started. I ended up like at some point like having a book on my table about like Linux. And that was like 95-ish, something like that. I remember Red Hat 4.2, Slackware 4.0. So it's, I think, 97 to early 2000. And moving data using floppy disks, between school and home. Exactly this kind of stuff, right? Like
gotta be real careful with them.
Kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the point is that if you show that to kids nowadays, it just, not
it's baffling, yeah.
Point, right?
Yeah.
But that's
like a relic.
Yeah, well, kind of, and so that's how I sort of get started. And at this time, one need to realize that basically, pen test was not really existing. Like even like computer security was not taught at university, right? I mean, that was something that basically the IT people were doing on the side, not at kind of growing gray hairs now, but it's kind of at a time where basically that was easy and not easy at the same time to get into the field, because on one hand it was about getting access to this information. On the other hand, it was about like doing that professionally and only that. Right. So that's how I got my first kind of jobs, basically doing Linux hosting stuff. So I landed a job in a hosting company, and at some point, obviously, since security was really much what I wanted to be doing, those guys have been helping me to taking some responsibilities along with that. Creating a first company very early in my, I was before 25 with a couple of guys. We failed miserably, but learned a bunch out of that.
What kind of business was it? Was it pen testing?
So that was like more like the web development. I mean, the things which were paying down at this time, a bit of consultancy on configuring like Cisco router, this kind of thing. So I started to like inject a bit of security here and there into what I was doing with my customer. And at some point, I got a friend of mine who basically, told me like, look, I'm not sure what you're doing here, but I have a job for you. That was in Switzerland back at this time. And basically, it's the job interview is you come, you work with us, and if you do the job, you can stay. Right? That was a completely different life. At the time where people were not looking at your curriculum or whatsoever. Yeah, you're coming from the community. Your deal. You're doing the job. You're getting paid, and everyone's happy. Right? That's how it started.
Okay. You were saying that penetration testing and doing pen test work at the time was both hard and easy, and I imagine that's just because there were so few people doing it, and it was still kind of a untested territory or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm not that old.
Right. Okay.
Obviously, was already a lot of people doing it, but it was very like community centered, and
right.
It was a lot about it already was a lot of information online, right? So it was not like back in the early 90s where people really had to like do like searching in trashes to find information about this or that system and stuff that you heard or you've seen in the movies, right?
Right.
At my time, it was already like the earlier generation already did all that groundwork. We had a lot of things online, so it was already starting to be a bit of trying to find the right information at the right time, which is today completely different. I mean, today you're completely overloaded with all of this information available. You don't know where to start, right?
Right.
So I will define myself as a pre-Metasploit kind of pen tester. Back at the time where pen testing, which is sort of became red teaming now. So pen testing has a very different meaning nowadays.
Yes.
But pen testing was a lot of understanding your target, observing, building the codes, getting into it was not the hard point. That was mostly about like understanding what you were dealing with, right? What this landscape is looking like. And so we were super motivated. We are just a bunch of young adults with a well-paying job, computer to play with the whole day, working in data centers in different locations, including bunkers, doing jobs for the big telcos or large industry and some, government or government affiliated, institutions. So it was like, David versus Goliath. And we're just like these crazy kids, doing funny stuff with computers and getting paid and the customer being amazed by the kind of result we were able to bring. So that was a big part of this aspect, the motivation aspect, which was really driving the need for learning and doing stuff in that time.
Right. Now, tell me a little more about that. I mean, I agree with you that, pen testing and red teaming and stuff, there's so many sort of subdivisions now that pen testing means something fully different. But like sort of, give us sort of like your thoughts on that. Like it's obviously been sort of sub-segmented because there's so much to be done within the, the frame that you have to have the sort of invasive people versus the sort of, like you said, the more defensive ones or the ones who are, rooting around or whatever. Can you, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it, obviously it diversified, as you said, very broadly, and we have all of those different specialties and so on. And one of the things why I got into the defense side was that I was absolutely fascinated by basically the other side of the mirror, and why does it. Why is the cost of the defense so much higher than the cost of the offense? Like, why just a bunch of teenagers in a basement can make so much damage to something which takes millions to build and run, right? Yeah. So that was, how I got in there. And with the time I realized that it's just the different side of the same coin, right? So I think I will always remind. I will remain, with an offensive thinking, and this is what is making me a good defender in a sense, right? That's really like the seeing and young sort of things, right? The things come together as a whole, and I will definitely, encourage people to be coming back and forth between. Not only the blue and the red sides, the defense and the offense team, but also between customers and vendors. This community, is so strong and moving in, and moving the frontier so much in the past years that you really can, figure a frontier where you hoop from the different things and become a very strong player by basically embracing and overarching across all those different things, regardless of super specialized got some of those things. I mean, obviously, not everyone can write like this crazy iOS exploit thingy, right? But it's not about that. It's about like how do you place yourself in that game, and obviously with the experience coming in the age, you're sort of looking at it from more of a big picture, kind of point of view, and that really helped me to actually bounce from the different sides.
Can you talk a little bit about that, about what red teamers can learn from blue teamers and vice versa? Because, it gets very siloed, and I think people feel like they need to just know one thing really well, right?
And you know what? I think, it really got siloed on paper. And it's like a bit for everything in that community, like sharing stuff. Whenever it's malware or even like incident details and stuff and so on, right? Everyone was like, ooh, like, you cannot do these kind of things. Well, the truth is that we always been sharing, always been like exchanging like tips and tricks and, exchanging information about that threat actor or exchanging about like that particular incident because it may happen to you tomorrow, right? So this sharing of stuff always happened on all the different sides, red and blue and so on, right?
Yeah.
So and we are and that's interesting. Right now we are getting to the genesis of that with the apparition of and that's after a decade of development with the community. I'm thinking about like what's happening with the MITRE attack framework and all of those things, right? So we've been building all of those different, all of this tech with all of the different, methods and processes to actually being able to exchange, being able to understand.
You're quantifying it, yeah.
Exactly. And at some point we end up with, right now we are getting with the tools to basically learning from the different side. And a lot of people see the attack framework, which is basically a way to describe all the technique, tactics, and procedures of threat actors, right? To classify and quantify and measure the gap in terms of your defense and so on, right? Sure. A lot of people are looking at it from a blue team only perspective, but people starting to know using it on the red team side, right? So, and it lets us to different things such as like the Tiber framework, the Tiber EU. It's a bit less known on the US side, but that's basically the idea is that you're taking what you learn from the threat actors to actually do a red team exercise, which is meaningful toward the organization. So you're not going to test about all the crazy things because it's obviously interesting if you know that some kind of alien hacker come to you and he breach you. Well, you know what? He's going to manage it. That's right. It's not always a way. But basically, you want to test your team and shape your defenses and so on based on a realistic kind of attacker, that the sort of guy who go after your industry, right? So we start to have these tools, and we start also to have the concept. So beyond the blue and red team, you also have guys playing purple teaming. So basically, how do you sort of circulate between those different, angles and those different perspectives in order to really maximize your investment toward building a proper defense? Because the thing that we have to remember always is that the red team of the pen tester back at this time, it just needs to be right once, or just a chain of, couple of one-time, success. The blue team has to be successful all the time.
Yes,
right? So this is, back to what I was saying, what's fascinating me and what actually brought me to actually bounce between the different sides is really trying to grow this understanding and see how does it, the one comes into the other. If that makes sense.
It does, yeah. So I want to move from that, so sort of from the offensive to the defensive time. Can you tell me about the transition from these early assignments, your early pen testing, to your work with Malware Incident Response with Deutsche Bank? What are some of the project's skill advancements, knowledge acquisitions? We like to talk about sort of like your professional development, not just sort of like war stories, but like what are some of the things that you learned that sort of like helped you move up the ladder to such a prestigious position? Like what were some of the things that that the bank responded to in your background that let them know you were the right person for the job?
Yeah, so I've been working for banks before. I was skeptical at first at working in a bank, rather than, I was the bank as a customer. Okay. And funny story is that when I got started to working for the bank, my mother stopped speaking to me and say, "Oh, you're working for the bank. That's not somewhere you should be working at." So
wow. I like your mother.
It was in 2011, kind of, sort of after 2008 and the crisis,
right.
saying like, bad press for the bank.
Yeah, it was not the safe bet that it once was. Yeah.
And frankly, the thing is that you have some of those key verticals, and financial is one of them, who are extremely early adopters towards these kind of topics like security, but also like data science, machine learning, and all those things, because those guys have a problem, they understand the problem, and they have the money to solve it, right? Yes. So that has been, for me, sort of, first off, I've been extremely fortunate to be working for very open-minded persons. I mean, those guys were starting to build a threat intel program in the bank in the 2010, right? That was, threat intel was still a military thing done at this time. Was nothing that, the industry was really implementing as a way to gain visibility into their product, right? So I got started with that team, super excited, and my job was about to bring them some understanding of what about all those malware and all those things, and in between the lines, they sort of wanted me to bring it takes a thief to catch a thief kind of spirit in the team, to like help them to look at the different perspective on that. And very quickly, we basically started to build our own capability, because you may guess that no one wants a guy like me, like building like a malware analysis capability inside the corporate network, right? So we had the credit to build our own lab and our own things. And for quite some years, I heard people saying, well, if you continue doing this kind of things, you're going to get fired. Bad luck. Apparently, it was working pretty well. We got including on TV with the CEO claiming he has a malware analysis lab in Germany and all the things. And at the end, we ended up with having a fantastic world-class kind of capabilities that people were actually looking to duplicate in their own organization. So it was always a bit of luck. Obviously, always a bit of, you had the right spot with the right persons.
Right.
I was really driven by this passion and this, I was really eager to understand this other side of the mirror. And I just ended up working for the finest persons. And it could have been anywhere. The bank was just basically where you had these right combinations. And I'm very thankful for that.
So, I mean, it's if I heard you right, it sounds like is worth noting is that you were desirable to them because of how sort of audacious you were in your pen testing. You were saying some of these things could get us arrested or whatever. So, was your boldness kind of a selling point, or?
Yeah. So they had a need to understand what was going on the other side's, mind, right? And this is why they were building a threat intel program. And, that was for me, for them to hire me to show them this other side was basically the logical consequence of having built this threat intelligence program, right? And they needed someone at the heart of it, which can actually walk them through what is basically an attacker will be doing. And since that was my job to do that, and again, legally, I'm not speaking about getting behind bars for that.
Of course.
I think there is way enough work in the legal industry to go taking stupid risks. I like to sleep by night, and I absolutely like to not to have to think the day I'm getting caught. So I always choose the legal side. I'll define myself as a white hat, still this. You can be a good person, and obviously looking at it from the very offensive point of view and very creative. And this is what I wanted, this is what not.
Yeah, no, I was not implying that you were being criminal in any way, but of course.
To be clear, because just the term hackers is so much loaded.
Of course,
It's last, but it has been crazy at some point. This is what brought me in Germany, because the term hacker was basically not being about the criminal. That was about doing also positive things, which was not the case back in time in France.
Yeah, most people see hackers in movies or on TV, and they're always bad, or they're at least rogue, and chaotic, but with good intentions or whatever. So the idea of
we are chaotic, but we are not bad.
Right? No, of course, yeah. No, we totally agree. Speaking of day-to-day things like that, I was wondering if you could sort of walk me through your average workday here at QuoLab. You've done a variety of security-related jobs through your career, so could you sort of tell me what your day is like now? And how it sort of compares to the sort of more Wild West days when you were really out on the front lines doing the work. Are you doing more sort of stuff with clients and sort of management type things now?
Well, a bit of the two. First off, I do not define what I'm doing as a work or as a job or whatever. That's again, very fortunate to have found a passion which really both helped me to develop myself, being properly paid as well, and that is I'm just living it. So to be honest, anyone will tell you that I'm working basically 24/7. Actually, today is a day off. I don't know if you know, but in Europe, it's no one is working.
Yes.
And you see, everything is empty and so on.
Yeah. Okay.
And for me, it's also as a father today, it's about finding the right balance. But basically, I like to work when I want to work, and I'm always into this dynamic, regardless if I'm in holidays or whatsoever. The truth is that for the kind of things I'm doing today, it's not something I do alone, or I could be just trying for many years and obviously failing because arriving too late on target. So it's about team, right? And it's a lot of what we are doing is team effort, and I'm really surrounded by self-minded persons who are working very hard, looking at the different problems, who are passionate into finding solutions for them. Trying not to shoot ourselves in the foot or walking around with a hammer, looking for a nail, really trying to be open and critical to what, the problem at hand and solving it. And, for that, sometimes it requires to be a bit more on the side on management to deal with some of those, human aspect, because at the end it's about human, right?
Right.
And I'm taking a lot of pleasure, I have to say, to converse with customers on their use case, and not only when they're happy, when they are also particularly unhappy about a way that a way that something is done.
Yeah, it's a learning experience to find out what they're not happy with.
Yeah, and I know it's really like being supportive in supporting where it matters, taking your space and just your space, and doing it right and being focused. That's the thing. Yeah. So no working schedule for me. No holiday schedule for me. My wife hates me for that.
Yeah.
But basically, it's like, okay, you know what? Next week, let's go on holidays. Maybe that's the best moment.
There you go. So I still kind of want to know, like what do you have like an average day? It seems like it's completely different day to day, but like, what are some things you do consistently each day? Like, do you have to check emails every day? Do you have to sort of check in with key clients every day? Like, what are some of the sort of like caps? Obviously you're not in like a conventional job role or whatever, but like what are things that are sort of like constant in your career life?
So I wake up early, also because I have kids and they wake me up early. And moreover in this time of pandemic and staying at home and working from home, which is not a very much of a difference than the way we used to do these kind of things ourselves, to be very honest. So waking up with the kids, taking breakfast. I like to, the best work I do is before lunch in general. I either answer customer requests, or I still code, developing stuff. I have my own set of tickets that the team is letting me doing. I don't know if they really incorporate the code into the product, but that's not what matters.
That's a whole other story.
Or they complain. Well, we have this you break it, you own it kind of spirit. So if ever my code is getting in the product and is broken, then that's my problem to deal with. So at least on this side it's safe. I like reading a lot. I read a lot, and that when I can, I do by morning, and basically by afternoon also, because you spoke with Dan, because part of the team is overseas. It's their morning, so I really do the maximum I can by afternoon with them, for making sure that we keep the ball rolling between the two continents. And that's part of the things that I had already in the cyber operation aspect, like when really running incidents between the guy from Singapore, the guy from Europe, and the guy from East Coast US, and so on. It's really also addictive. You roll this time and so on. So basically, again, morning for me is generally like focus on myself, my learning, and supporting customers, and the focus things. And by afternoon, it's a bit more of the strategy conversations and keeping the ball running.
Okay. So, I had a bunch of questions here, and I feel like we've already kind of answered them, but talking about the sort of active and passive forms of cybersecurity and red teaming versus pen testing versus, malware response and things like that. So I think you've answered those pretty well, but I kind of want to sort of spin out into that a little bit and just sort of get your advice on what sorts of things you recommend people who would be entering the industry now, who want to do this kind of stuff. Like, what should they be learning? What should they be doing, in a hands-on way? Like, what should they be able to demonstrate to potential employers? Like, what, where to start, I guess, and how to sort of decide, because, you're saying red teamers can learn a lot from blue teamers, and vice versa. So like, what are your thoughts on, learning to specialize, or learning just to learn, or, learning in ways that, employers can sort of see that you know how to do this thing? Like, where would you start if you were starting now?
I mean, frankly, back to the roots, it's all about curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not, I mean, obviously there are some stuff that you need to be able to be doing, and that depends for, in function of the kind of position that you're applying to, right? I mean, if today you apply to work in a hosting company and have no clue what's Docker and Kubernetes, I mean, you're not fit for the job, right? And the same on other aspects. So, there's some of those basics, and those basics are, I will not say easy to master in any sense, but at least you can very easily finding some kind of roadmap to
Okay.
To learn from it and so on. And you should absolutely never take no as an answer. I mean, it's all about motivation. If you're seriously committed about anything, I trust you will succeed. And frankly, in the cybersecurity industry, when you see like the scarceness of the resource, and and the need we have for people, I'm pretty sure you will find someone who gives you a chance, and if you work out, you're definitely gonna make a career out of that. But it's all driven by curiosity. You need to really want it, because this is such of a vast topic nowadays. It's there's so many different things to be looking into. It's hard not to become overwhelmed. And
Right.
the best people I've seen in that field over the years are very often the one who are focused, who have even if they're a bit chaotic in their approach, they have kind of an idea of where they go with it, and they really stick to it, right?
Yeah.
So I in my time, it was about like a normal sort of chain of progression, right? You were starting to look at this thing and suddenly realize, well, you have to get access to this information which is there, and for that you need a computer. How does it work? What's about the networking part? How do you get to the information on the net, and so on. I mean, today I've been working with people who are amazing at doing really crazy things with phones, and basically if you ask them to set up like a basic network, they fail, right? So it's not so much about nowadays about like really having this logical progression. It's basically keeping some focus on what you want to do, and
Yeah.
there would be a spot for you.
Okay.
And trust in that.
Yeah. So, for people who are, so that was sort of like really good advice for people just getting started and stuff. Do you have any sort of thoughts for people who might feel kind of stuck in their current position, or don't really know how to sort of move to the next level, or they're working a help desk, or they're reading log reports all day or whatever? Like, what are some things they could do today that sort of would jumpstart them and sort of re-spark what it was that they liked about this in the first place before they got stuck?
That's an odd question. The reason why I'm here and the reason why I'm living in the different countries and my native country and stuff is because I could not just wait on the sofa for the things to be coming at me, right? So my best advice is don't let that happening to you, that you realize one day that you just dropped on a good chance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's worse not trying than failing at trying. See what I mean? I mean, you don't want to watch yourself in the mirror and realizing that, you could have been someone else and having at least tried it. And even if you failed, and so what?
Mm-hmm.
Not trying is the worst, I think, to be honest. And again, if you're serious into what you're doing, I mean, I've been part of my study on the side of working. A lot of people are doing it. Learning. You have so many different sources. You have local user groups. Local community around security. In your town, but you'd also have that online if you don't want to step out of your home. I mean, there's so many ways to access the right persons. Just don't take for no for an answer, and just don't do that to you. Just keep trying.
So with the world currently kind of on lockdown, has that changed how you do your work right now? And do you think it's sort of changed anything about people sort of networking or trying to, sort of find new positions? Have you seen a big sort of change in the way that you do business right now with COVID-19 and everything?
Yeah, I mean, past the moment where everyone was sort of bracing for impact, and we had a lot of that Europe was, was hit a bit before that the US did.
Right.
And we are just starting to get out of from that and really slowly being careful not to have a second wave. But it obviously changed a lot of things. And, a lot of people are speaking about the new normal. I would say we do also have a new cyber normal in the sense that along with the lens of the management of the pandemic and as well as with all those changes, so the acceleration of the digitalization, so all those programs which were like taking ages suddenly just got through. And suddenly everyone can work from home. Big surprise. In fact, that was all possible before. It's just like we didn't look at it seriously enough, right? But this is definitely changing the landscape in terms of what that means for cybersecurity, because you have sort of a shift from what you were sort of expecting the enterprise sort of umbrella to take care of, and the risk sort of shifted to the end user who basically at home with his VPN trying to do some work and so on.
Right.
So it changed a lot of things. So it one of the outcome of that is a good one for us in the cybersecurity industry. I mean, we knew that cyber was here to stay and is definitely here to stay, right? I mean, it's again like the best moment to also getting into that industry because there are jobs to take, right? And these jobs are solid and they will remain, right?
Yes.
But on the customer side, that obviously has been a bit of time to understand, okay, where is my budget going? Where should I put, this or that? So the networking, the relationship with the customer has been disrupted, and no one can deny that. Has been a bit of, I would say, like 2-3 weeks, like everyone was sort of wondering what's going to happen. And as soon as people realize that the old normal is not going to come back, I think we moved very fast. And I think here we can be quite proud of the community itself, and not only ours, but, a lot actually being following the same trend. We moved a lot of just conferences online. So there's a lot of virtual things happening, and ourselves we shifted a lot toward like better communication and so on. And this is again an opportunity. I'm a very optimistic person, so I can only speak about the good things out of that.
Right. No, please.
One of the interesting aspects is that basically it's putting a lot of the competition at the same level, right? Because you cannot just engage like an incredible amount of money into the next RSA or the next big kind of conference. Like everyone has to play with the same tools, right?
Yeah, sure.
So it sort of it sort of reshuffled the cards a bit, and that's the good thing. But I think back to your question on networking, I mean, I think networking is when you're here trying to sell something, and we are not trying to sell something in the sense that what we do, we believe so strongly into. We know that when people see that, they understand the use case, and when we're working together, this is something that they truly see is a game changer for the ways that they operate. And this is not about making a sale. This is about like working together. So I really see my customers as partners and not as just someone buying a license of what we do. And things which come along with that is basically, don't do networking, make friends, work with people generally. And
networking also sort of...
sorry, go ahead.
I would say networking also sort of implies that you're only there to sort of get something from them. Whereas if you make friends with them, then there's a give and take. You have something to provide to them as well, and rather than you're just basically asking them a favor. Yeah,
it's kind of it's back to quality. And this is what startups are very much about, because we have this this relationship with the early adopter, with the one taking the risk along with us. And that's why again, customers are partners. And, this is about like really supporting them on their journey, and they become friends. And, for that, I cannot just have like 200 of that.
Yeah, right. That's true.
I mean, it's really something that we work very closely and so on. And somehow the pandemic sort of brought people back together at some point. And, this is why I see that very positively. It also has been reflecting on the human aspect much more than what we had in the past couple of years, where it was just a rush on making the revenues. And I'm sort of happy with that, to be honest.
So, you're clearly a very sort of ambitious, driven, creative person. Can you sort of tell me about your personal goals for the future, both with QuoLab and just as a cybersecurity professional? What are some things that you hope to still accomplish in the years to come?
Yeah, well, I keep repeating that I'm grateful, because that's really true. I don't think anything for granted, and I know that with the rights are coming the responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
So that's ambitious. I don't know. I certainly want to have some level of impact with regard to my environment, and my environment are the people out there, and the real job with security is really like being an enabler for the different industry, where the other people also having a jobs, and it's about like bringing all that together, and that's what I wish for myself, really, and being supportive and building things with amazing persons and building cool things all together is what I wish to myself. The fact is that Collab is sort of reflecting directly out of that, in the sense that Collab is a substrate for other ideas and other things. So Collab is this data fusion platform with this capability for people to collaborate on investigations and so on. So it's really like, and it's not necessarily just something for cyber, it could be for other projects and so on. And this is a substrate on which we are growing different ideas with communities and people. So really the commitment is on building the tooling for reconciling the human and the machines, and sort of getting those things to be working together. So yeah, I mean, in a sense, like my personal goals, the company goals, and what we do is directly, obviously, very much overlapping.
So as we wrap up today, got a couple last questions here. Could you just tell me a bit about QuoLab, what it's all about, and what some of the exciting projects you have going right now with you?
Absolutely. So Collab is a distributed data vision platform with a collaborative analysis capability. So it has been mainly built for cybersecurity operations. From the threat monitoring to threat hunting, incident response, malware analysis, these kind of things, we observe that in a lot of different CERT, SOC, that was like being worked out by different teams, and the driving the incident or driving an analysis means like being also able to zoom out and see the big picture. And we were really lacking of the tools to actually like bring all those guys to be working together with the data fused together and these kind of things.
Right.
So that's really what Collab is about. It's really like bringing all those data points, all those people, to directly be working on the matter through the access of let's call it a workbench for analytics in analysis tools. So again, same story, bringing people together, good product made by people who used to that for quite some time themselves, and we were looking for tools they could not buy. So there we go, we did it.
You did it. So one last question here. If people want to know more about Fabien Dombard or Collab, where can they go online?
Jokingly, I could still say maybe I'm on IRC somewhere. I mean, still some people are.
All right. You heard it here, man. Go check IRC. He's out there, man.
No, I mean, obviously, social network is where you can find us nowadays. Following us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on. Get in touch. DM always open, so please feel free.
Okay.
And obviously, we'd love to have you just come visiting collab.com, offering you a demo, giving you a proof of concept, having some fun together, looking at cool data, maybe having a beer.
Perfect. I like all those things. Fabien, thank you so much for your thank you so much for your time today. This was really a lot of fun.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that.
And thank you all today for listening and watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can find many more of them on our YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com and type in Cyberwork with Infosec to check out our collection of tutorials, interviews, and past webinars. If you'd rather have us in your ears during your workday, all of these videos are also available as audio podcasts. Just search Cyberwork with Infosec in your podcast catcher of choice. For a free month of our Infosec skills platform, just go to infosecinstitute.com/skills and sign up for an account. And in the coupon code, type Cyberwork, all one word, all small letters, no spaces, and you can get a free month. Thank you once again to Fabien Dombard and QuoLab, and thank you all for watching and listening. We will speak to you next week.